I would like to just take a moment to introduce our speakers, and then I'm going to share the floor with them. First of all, we have Rob Russell, and he is the Director of Labor and Workforce Development at the University of Missouri and SBDC. And we also have Mike Adams, who is the Small Business and Development Center Director. If at any moment that you struggle to hear or see or would like any information, please don't hesitate to just pop a message into the chat, and I'll be able to help you. So Rob, the floor is yours. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you all very much for inviting us. Mike, you're on, right? Just testing the audio here.
I think so.
Okay, yep, I hear you now. So as I always tell folks, technology is a lot of fun until it doesn't work or it's working in different ways here. So as I said, I'm Rob Russell. I'm the Director of Extension's Labor and Workforce Development Program, and I am also an Assistant Extension Professor here on the MU campus. Most of my work involves tackling workforce issues that we see in the state of Missouri and figuring out how we can better prepare ourselves for the demands of the 21st century and the environment that we're in. Mike, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Mike Adams, Evaluation and Process Manager for the Missouri SBDC. We work with small businesses around the state. And I also do workforce development along with Rob, in coordination with Rob on occasion.
And the topic for today that we're focusing on here is the idea of creating brand fans. And no, it's not what you think. It's not fanning out and that sort of stuff, but it's really thinking about how do we build fans and people that are kind of super fans, if you want to think about it, in our work and amongst our customer base. How do we do that work in order to build our business in the 21st century here? So I was thinking about it. I thought let's see if I can forward my slides here. Another subtitle for this might be, for those of you that are movie aficionados, that in a world of Fox books, how can the shop around the corner survive? And if you don't get that reference, it's from the movie You've Got Mail, which is a romantic comedy that came out roughly 20 years ago now, starred Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan. It might even be more than 20 years. It's a classic, odd couple sort of story that they have here. But in this story, there's a subcontext, right? And the subcontext is that Meg Ryan's character owns this little tiny bookshop in New York City called The Shop Around the Corner. It specializes in children's literature. And then Tom Hanks's character is part of a family business that sells books called Fox and Sons Books, which is a thinly veiled reference to Barnes and Noble at the time. And a subcontext, a subplot to the movie is how then this shop around the corner is going to survive with the onslaught of this mega bookseller that's showing up around the corner. That there's all sorts of things in there about the loss of personality and things like that in New York City, at least amongst some of the characters. But really the question of how do we differentiate our business in a world where convenience reigns in other areas here. And I think we could perhaps even change that subject today, right? We could change it to say, in the world of Amazon, in the world of purchasing everything you need at a click, how can small or local businesses and even mid-sized and other businesses not only survive, but how can they thrive again in the onslaught of Amazon? And we've got different examples. We'll talk about that. But a lot of what we're really focusing is on customer service, and we're going to talk about customer service more broadly than what we necessarily think about, and really kind of talk about the continuum of customer service that exists out there, that people that pay attention to branding and things like that are looking at and are talking about the importance of businesses providing outstanding customer service in a whole variety of ways in order to build their audience base in the 21st century. We're going to talk about the idea of out of that coming brand fans, and the idea of for lack of a better term, super fans, and people that will be with you at any point for your business, and they will oftentimes, we'll talk about pay a premium for the product that you have there, and really kind of think about why they matter to businesses and what businesses do to cultivate them. And then we're going to conclude the presentation today really kind of thinking about creating brand fans and how can you improve this customer service experience more broadly, so that you have the opportunity to create these, for lack of a better term, super fans amongst your customer base, and and then use that to build your business, particularly in businesses that are service-based businesses, retail businesses, things like that. How can you build that in a way that develops loyalty and develops your business as a hopefully an increasingly viable entity here? And so we're going to talk about and start talking about this customer service continuum. And as I think about customer service, the historic model that we think about is the idea of customer service. And it's the idea that we are here, that as a business, we're here to give advice or assistance to your customers when they need it. And so that can be everything from they have a problem and you help them solve that problem. It can be if they have a question for you about which pair of speakers you might be looking for, to date myself on a reference here probably, but which pair of speakers, you can give a little bit of advice to it. But you're really there just to complete the transaction and help the customer move along. As we move up this customer engagement continuum, or the customer service continuum, the next level that we talk about when we see people talking about it is beyond just plain customer service, and it's a customer care idea. And it's the question of how well customers are taken care of while they interact with that company and brand. So customer service, if you think about that as the initial idea, it's the idea, okay, I'm going to solve your problem quickly here, and you move on. Customer care is about building a longer term relationship, listening to customers and things like that, and truly trying to take care of them when they interact with you. But the thinking that's out there today amongst a lot of folks that are in brand management and those sort of conversations is really that businesses have to be focusing on customer experience. And customer experience includes a whole lot of stuff, and we're going to talk about what that includes. It includes customer service and customer care, but it's really the sum of all contact that a customer has with the company brand, from the first time they hear about you to the point in time they purchase the product, to the follow-up that happens with your brand after purchase. And so that's a much more holistic, but also a much more comprehensive view of the relationship with the customer. And it's really rooted in their experience. And we know that people want that experiences drive a lot of consumption in the 21st century here. And so how do we sort of think about that, and how do we create that customer experience, that customer forward conversation is really what we want to be talking about today. Mike?
Yeah, so let's talk where it all kind of starts. The customer service aspect of this, the advice or assistance company brand gives you, when you walk into a store for the first time, you're looking to buy a new product, you're looking for a new service. It could be cell phone, it could be cable, it could be a new dishwasher, whatever it may be. What is that first experience you have with the employee that is taking care of you? Is it a good experience? Is it a bad experience? Are they giving you good advice? Are they giving you bad advice, or no advice at all? Are they trying to sell you the most expensive product, or are they actually trying to customize what you need? And so that is very important right off the bat, is what is that very first experience, that first impression. We talk about it all the time. First impressions are the most important. Those you cannot take back. So that is the very first part of customer service. And then once somebody does buy the product, are you assuring them that it's a good product? Are you helping them out if they do have problems? Can they call you? Is there a helpline? Or is it just, they make the purchase and have a good day, we'll see you tomorrow kind of thing. So make it a great buying experience by saying, all right, if you do have issues, here's what we can do for you moving forward. Whether, again, it doesn't necessarily have to just be a product, it can be a service. We have this ongoing service. It's not just today. We're here for you. Give us a call and we'll do the best we can. It can also often be reactive and focused when a customer has a negative experience. When a customer has a negative experience, they're not coming back. They may come back just because maybe your prices are lower or something like that. But for the most part, if you have a lot of competitors out there, and that client has that customer has a negative experience, they probably are not coming back to your store, to your service. So always keep it positive, keep it moving forward. Rob? So how well customers take care of is the most important thing. It really sells your brand. It sells your company. It really means what you stand for. So it's beyond customer service to the fact where that client is going to think about you when they think about a product or a service. The first thing that comes to mind is going to be you. And that is super important. So get that emotional bond with that client. I'm not saying emotional, not necessarily going to like tea or dinner with them, but just get that bond where you guys are talking together. They understand what you're selling them, they understand what they're buying, and they understand that the service moving forward is going to be really good. And that just makes that connection, and they are going to pick you first whenever they need that product or service. So listen to the needs. And, we've talked about this too. It's not just selling them the most expensive thing on the showroom or the most expensive service you have. Listen to what they want. Do they just need a middle of the line to kind of get them through the next couple of years? Do they need a service that, maybe is not $100 internet service, or is it just the $50 that'll do them just fine? So listening to the needs of the client is the most important thing that you can absolutely do. And then, think to yourself, okay, how can I help this client move forward, or this customer move forward with what they actually need? And it's not just one interaction. If you can, again, engage with them, make sure that if they have any problems or if they really like it, the product or service, that they're going to re-engage with you or your company and move forward like that. Word of mouth is the absolute best form of marketing there is. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a personal interaction with you and the client or the customer, but maybe they're telling others, hey, I went here and I had a great experience. They listened to me. They gave me exactly what I needed. And I highly recommend them anytime you need the same thing.
Hey, Mike, can I give an example here? And
Sure.
The picture I have on the screen here was an intentional choice. Going back to our start of our conversation, as we thought about the Fox books versus Shop Around the Corner, small booksellers. I remember 20 years ago there was the conversation, as the independent bookseller going away in the face of Barnes and Noble. Amazon was a nascent company at the time, but there were a whole host of large, big box booksellers out there. And, the question was, how do small booksellers survive? And what we've seen over time is that we might not have the number of small booksellers that we once did, but the way they are surviving is through this customer care process, that they are developing relationships with their customers, and they have a staff that is knowledgeable and listens enough that that if I walk into that bookseller and I say, hey, I want a new book, and they can say to you, okay, well, what do you like? What have you liked? That they are going to find something that is different than what the Amazon algorithm might recommend to you, but it's going to scratch that itch or fill that need that you have as a consumer there. And so that it's in some ways you're going there because you're as a consumer, you want their curated knowledge of what they know in that store to be able to help you think and define things that you otherwise would not find. And so that's an example of what we mean by customer care, having that knowledge, really listening, and then finding the recommendation that is going to fit for that consumer, and hopefully the consumer loves it, and then they come back to you and say, I really like the picture here. I really like the book on animals that you gave me. Can you give me something else? And this can exist in a whole variety of different elements, but the listening and the knowledge is what is part of this process of that consumers are paying for. That it's more than just walking into a store that's impersonal or clicking something online, but it's really the consumer craving that interaction and understanding what you were giving them has value beyond just the item that you're purchasing.
So that actually kind of leads right into this slide right here, and Rob already pretty much summed this one up with the with that, and so I'm gonna kind of let you read this, but it is that first, that first impression, that going into the store, going into the service, making that phone call, and okay, do you know what you want going in? If you don't, does that person you're talking to, is that customer service representative, or is that employee have the knowledge to help you out with what you're looking for? So you can describe what you're looking for, and they'll say, okay, this is what you want, or this is what you need, or this is what we suggest. And then, of course, you have the opportunity to say, well, it's not exactly what I'm looking for. And then they can retort, okay, well, let's look at the other option to get you exactly what you're looking for. And so it starts with that very beginning, that first interaction, and then it goes through purchase, and then taking that product or service home, or using that service at home, whatever it may be, and then going through that to the end. And if there are issues, or if you're very satisfied, being able to talk with that company, that employer, whoever it may be, to, if it's problems, to help with the issues, being knowledgeable enough to help with the issues. And I think that's a really important part of it, is you really need to have employees that are knowledgeable about what it is. If you're selling a product, or if you're selling a service, being very knowledgeable about those things. And we're going to get into that a little bit later about how to hire that knowledge and that kind of outgoing personality of customer service.
And Mike, I have a quote written down that I found after I shared this with you here. It comes from McKinsey, which is a multinational consulting firm. That really talks about that this customer experience idea moves beyond just customer service and customer care, that it really is a customer-centered perspective about what a business should be doing. And so if you focus on the customer with everything that you are doing, from the very first time they hear about you to well after they've done that service, then and then you optimize and ensure that every time they interact with your business, that they have that great customer service, they have that great experience there, they have a flawless experience, then it becomes developing that deep relationship with your company. And it's based on what the customer experiences and what's best for them, and not what is best for the company. And so it's really about that customer journey and thinking through that part of the process in order to develop a brand identity, to develop a deep connection there that moves beyond a transaction and moves beyond that transaction to a deep sense of, this is who we are and this is what we do here. And the example picture, if you don't recognize, it's Southwest Airlines, and it was a YouTube video of how they of one of their flight attendants, doing a creative. If you've ever flown Southwest, occasionally you'll get a very creative reading of the safety parts of that, and how that sort of differentiates Southwest from its competitors, but also then how it affects the customer experience is a big part of what this is talking about. We think about Southwest, it started as a Maverick airline. It has developed into one of the biggest airlines in the U.S., but it's retained some of that culture that it had in its early days of not being as staid, if you want to think about it, not being as much like its other large airlines, and really kind of focused on how can we be different and what does that mean for us to be different. I remember flying Southwest back in the days where you had to get to the airport and you got a boarding pass number when you got to the airport, and you showed up and you had to, that's how you boarded. And that culture, then how do they bring that culture to bear while using technology to change and do different things, is really what we're talking about with this customer experience process here.
Thanks, Rob. And I'll kind of piggyback on that too. When I worked in the private sector, speaking of the customer experience, I went to work for a company that was bringing in $10 million a year. Pretty good, income, pretty good revenue. Within 5 years, we were doing over 100 million. And the reason why is we really flipped the switch on how we were approaching our customers and made sure that the customer was number one. And we had great relationships with our customers, and we hired folks that we knew that could connect with those customers and really take care of their needs. So it really, that customer experience really does matter. And so you look here, some of the statistics that we're looking at. 73% of consumers point to customer service as the important factor. But only about half of customers say that the companies provide a good customer experience. So, if you go to certain stores or get certain service, of course, you're not always going to get perfect service, but 49% is actually not that bad. I don't think personally, but if you can increase that in your own company, that's whenever you are able to retain those long-term customers. Would you pay more for greater convenience? I think a lot of people would. This is 43%. I think it's probably a little bit higher than that, but that's what the numbers say. As long as that you're getting good customer service, a good customer experience, are you willing to pay $2, $3, $4, $5 more dollars for that experience? Right now, we're only seeing 43% saying that they would, and that can be a lot higher, providing that good experience. And 42% say of customers will pay for more friendly welcoming. So that's very similar to the last stat, right on par, 43% for that convenience and that friendliness and that welcoming experience. I think we've all walked in to some place and just did not feel welcome, so to speak. Where maybe it was an inconvenience to be in that store, or to call up that customer service line, or to try to get a new service, new internet, new cell phone, whatever it may be. And it's not a good experience. And so, always being that welcome, friendly, kind person definitely helps right when you walk in. And then 65% find the positive experience with the brand company to be more influential than advertising. So again, this kind of goes back to the word of mouth, going in for the first time, and you got that friendly greeter, you have that friendly person, you're walking down the aisle, hey, I can't find this, can you help me out? Oh yeah, sure, it's right over here. So those kind of things go a long way whenever you're talking about trying to increase your product sales or your service sales.
And this data, Mike, comes from PricewaterhouseCoopers, the consulting firm, accounting and consulting firm, their Future of Customer Experience survey in 2017, 2018. They interviewed about 15,000 people, and this is based on what they found with that.
Gotcha.
And I think part of as we think about the experience, certainly availability matters, right? And price matters and things like that. And so companies have to be able to compete in some of these areas, and businesses have to be able to compete with that. But as a consumer, being able to have that long-term relationship means that I'm more likely to return to you. And even if what you have to tell me is not what I want to hear the first time, or maybe the second or third time, if I feel like you're being honest with me, then that builds a relationship, even if what you have to tell me isn't what I wanted to hear. And I'll use my mechanic as a great example of this. A small local mechanic that I go to, and I go there not because I've compared their prices. It's inconvenient for me in terms of their location, but I go there because they have developed a trust and a rapport with me that I recognize that when they tell me something needs to be fixed, they're not trying to make an additional sale. They don't have a monthly quota that they're trying to meet. And I don't feel like I'm just part of the wheels that are turning for them in terms of what they want, but I really feel like they're trying to take care of me. And it's coming, and it's come out to play in various times where there was an issue that they repaired. A week later, the same issue happened. I took the car back in, and they said, well, we didn't fix it the first time, so we're not going to charge you to fix it the second time. And that's a part of this experience, right? And I will recommend them to anybody that comes to mid-Missouri as a place to get your car fixed. I will go there until the day I no longer have a car or I'm no longer in the area, because of that type of rapport that they have built with me over a number of years now. And that comes at the expense of other experiences you have in auto shops here and things like that. So.
Well,
So,
and something,
go ahead, Mike.
something on, that's all right. And something on that too, you know, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later, but you know, the whole scope of this is that brand awareness. And that's the important here. So that customer service, that customer experience side is building your brand. And that's what helps you get those long-term clients. So go ahead. Sorry, Rob.
Oh, yeah. So a few more things as you're a business owner, you think about, well, how do I create this? What do I need to focus on in this customer experience? And at least in this PricewaterhouseCoopers Future of Customer Experience survey, they actually provide some data. And the 5 things, I guess, that they found were most important for the customer experience, as well as also actually that customers said it was worth paying the most for, were efficiency. So they wanted things to be efficient, consumers did. And they want to feel like the process is an easy process to get through there. They want convenience, and they are looking for you to make it convenient for them to do business with you. Friendly service, knowledgeable service, and so making sure that the people that they are meeting are providing not only good service in the sense that, hey, people are friendly and that sort of stuff, but they have knowledge behind what they're doing and they understand what they're doing there, and then make it easy to pay. One of the things I think about from a restaurant perspective, nothing probably makes me more irritated as a consumer is when the server forgets to finish off the transaction, which is bringing the bill and the payment when I have to ask for that sort of stuff. When they've brought the food out, the food's great, you're having that, but then they ignore you after that point in time. I want to complete that transaction and move on because maybe I have tickets to go do something. Maybe there's a whole host of things like that, but making payment and that sort of the process easy is a big part of this customer experience. Now, what is less important, and it's not to say it's not important at all, but things like a loyalty program, things like charitability, things like design, brand image, unique experiences, while those matter, they are not as important as the 5 that we just talked about here. So as you're thinking about it from a business perspective, and what should I be investing in, you want to invest in technologies and things like that lead to better efficiency, lead to better convenience, lead to easier payment. And you want to invest in people and staff that can provide friendly service and knowledgeable service, and make sure that your folks know about what they're trying to sell and do so in a very friendly manner. At the same time, the survey tells us about what drives people away. And perhaps not surprising here, bad employee attitudes were the biggest thing that drives consumers away. Unfriendly service is right there. In fact, in the U.S., it's slightly higher than it is globally, but about 70% or so, 65 to 70% of respondents said those are the top 2 things that will drive them away from a company. If the company or the business is seen as being untrusted, that affects them a little bit less, but it still is pretty significant there. Having unknowledgeable employees is about a 50%, 50-50 or so effort that drives people away there. Inefficiency, and then not having the product available. And those are the things that will affect that consumer relationship. But really that attitude and that friendly service are the things that consumers are looking for at the most central as a part of this. And if you have that, if you win that, consumers are more likely to take some of the bad news that you have in ways that they otherwise might not if you haven't developed that relationship with them. And so as we talk about customer experience, I want to do a case study here, and a case study of a business that we are probably all very familiar with. And if we aren't, you're a better person than I am here, but Starbucks, right? It's a coffee company, and Starbucks had to, as we think back to Starbucks, first of all, they had to create a market for boutique coffee that didn't exist in a lot of parts of the country. But what Starbucks has done is really much deeper than just creating a market for coffee and giving people coffee. It has been about creating a full-on customer experience that is centered on Starbucks and gets to the point in time where, we hear about businesses that, you'll see these studies out there that say if you didn't buy your daily Starbucks, you would save $1,500 a year, right? And we see people that know that sort of stuff. I know that as a consumer, and yet on a regular basis, probably more times a week than I would like to admit, I make a trek over to Starbucks, in part driven by the experience that I have. Even though for years I held out and said, well, I don't want to go to Starbucks. I want a local coffee shop. I want differential experience. But how has that experience driven my interest? And a couple of things that Starbucks has done. First of all, from its early days, and Howard Schultz was the CEO that really kind of helped crystallize this for Starbucks, was that they decided that they were going to be more than a coffee shop. The coffee was the lure to get people in the door, but what they are is a community space, or what academics have called third spaces, and you'll see that in placemaking literature out there. But it's really a type of place that is between work and home, where customers could go to meet friends, get work done, hang out. It's not your living room. It's not your office, but it's another place where you can go and you can have experiences that you otherwise are not able to have in the office or in your living room there. And so what Starbucks did is they then actively studied the customer experience and looked at how they use their stores. And in fact, I know this because I had a grad school colleague that went to work for them. She had a PhD in anthropology, and she was part of a small research department that they had that went out and studied, at least in part, people that were using Starbucks stores, watched what they did, understood and developed ideas for how they were using those stores, what they were doing there, and then really kind of worked with the company to implement those practices. And so a few things that you see with this, you see the way Starbucks baristas interact with consumers, and Starbucks, this is not by accident. There's training that goes on. It starts with the hiring process. It carries on through the training that they do with their employees of how to treat people, to welcome them into the store, to always serve people with a smile, to make sure that they are producing things. And then when something does go wrong, they solve that problem very quickly and in the most efficient way possible. I had an experience there just last week where I was waiting in the drive-thru, and I didn't think anything of the time it took them to get there, but I get up to the front of I was the next person in line. I get there, and the Starbucks barista says, this is on the house. We're sorry that it took so long for you to get your drink. And I was like, I didn't even expect that as a consumer, but yet empowering their consumers to have their staff to have that sort of relationship with consumers and to go the extra mile is a key part of the brand that Starbucks has created. Over time, they've done things, they've branched into things like Starbucks Music. And so they've created playlists that are out there that you can find. Originally, they had CDs available in their stores. Now it's available on Spotify. But they have done things that really reflect on the Starbucks experience and not just on your transaction as a consumer going into that store. And the final thing that I want to talk about that they've done, and I know this and consumers know this, and yet they have become brilliant at this, is that they've created a gamified rewards program. And so the rewards that Starbucks offers, if you're not a member, you don't see this sort of stuff, but they create this rewards program that gives you benefits on particular days. So your birthday, you get a free drink that you can use for it there. They give you different challenges and things like that are a part of your rewards experience. And so what that does is it actually encourages consumers to purchase more from them. And we're talking about these high level engaged consumers to purchase more, to go to Starbucks more regularly, because you are going to, through the game that happens there, you are going to get rewards options there. And people know this, and yet, I as a consumer, the psychology is like, hey, I like Starbucks. That's a great place to go there. And if I buy this extra drink this week, guess what? I get 100 points towards a drink there. Now, the reality is I've bought 6 drinks already that week, and so I'm buying my 7th drink, and I'm actually not making money off of this. But the allure of being able to get this free drink is something that drives customer engagement there. And so it's driven Starbucks in the such that as of January 2021, they have almost 20 million members of their rewards program, and that rewards program generates nearly 50% of the company's revenue. So that's a really important part of their overall strategy, and they're using the data that they then collect as a part of this program to tweak what they offer, to interact with their really core consumers, and to help people understand what are the things that they value most with that brand. And so we've seen some rollouts at Starbucks is saying that they are doing more drive-throughs, more standalone drive-throughs, and less of the third space part of it, because they've built that reputation of having that, and they've built the customer base as that sort of place, but they recognize that customers also want some convenience and be able to move through as a part of that experience. And so Starbucks is a great example in terms of customer experience, because it's an intentional thought from the very first days of this coffee shop in Seattle. That was one of, probably dozens of coffee shops in that city, about how they have tried to engage in the customer, and they've tried to create a customer-centric business that really focuses on the experience that consumers have, and then how they use that in order to drive their business, drive the growth of their business, to bring skeptics over, and to then to find other things. And what we see is, I see signs at Starbucks just like this all the time now, that says, sorry, we're facing supply shortages just like everybody else. We apologize for their inconvenience. And as a consumer of that, I don't take that as like, oh my gosh, I'm going to walk out of Starbucks, I'm going to go to somewhere else. I take that as okay, I'll find something else to get here, because they've cultivated that loyalty. And they've cultivated the loyalty to get people to upsell and do other things behaviorally that they might not otherwise have done. And so that's, again, what we're talking about from this more holistic case study, customer experience perspective for businesses here. Mike, you there?
Sorry, I was on mute.
Not a problem.
Hear me now? Okay.
Yep.
So I was just saying that this is my favorite slide in the whole presentation because of the super fans. I don't know if everyone knows who the super fans were, but they were a Saturday Night Live skit back in the mid to late 80s, and they loved the Chicago Bears and the Chicago Bulls. Anyway, so it just makes me happy when I see it. So what does it mean to be super fans, though, is, high value customers, clients who have had a very positive experience, to where, we've already talked about it kind of in the last few slides. It's where they want to come back, not only for themselves, but they want to recommend you to friends, family, coworkers, whoever it may be. So it's that word of mouth. And again, that word of mouth marketing is the best marketing you can get, bar none. And it's a result of that focused customer experience, meaning that, as soon as they walk in the door, they're very, very important. And once they purchase something, whether it be a good or a product or a service, you're keeping in touch with them, making sure everything's okay. It's that overall experience. It's not just going into the convenience store and buying a Snickers bar and walking back out, paying your $2 and whatever it may be. But it's that from start to finish, what do you need? How can we help? Okay, here's what we have. This may be the best thing for you. So it's that start to finish. And I think that's probably the most important thing that we can get across today. It's that start to finish.
And successful sports teams might do a great job of creating super fans. They focus on that experience. Right. I mean, whether it's the St. Louis Cardinals or the Kansas City Chiefs, they open their doors. They're going to have a full stadium for the most part. They're going to have, the Cardinals could open their doors and attract over 3 million people, regardless of what the team does on the field. The Chiefs, the same sort of way. And it's that deep connection that fans have developed by watching them and going to those games over years.
Right. And dicta.
Exactly.
Everybody probably got that joke, but all right. Okay. So why do you need brand fans? Obviously, they're going to be loyal to your company. They're going to be loyal to your brand. And again, that's, you don't, some, obviously you're going to have consumers that go to a store, go to a service, or go to a car lot, or go to a furniture store, and they're going to buy one thing and may or may not come back. But if they have a great experience, guess what? Next time they need a couch, next time they need, as Rob put it, a dishwasher, or they needed, you know, a car or a restaurant, you know, maybe they like the food, you know, they're going to keep coming back. And that's really important is to get that repeat business. Rob, can you explain this one? I don't know what this is.
Which one? The price sensitive?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so what that means when we're talking about brand fans is that these are consumers that are going to purchase, they're going to purchase your product relatively regardless of price, right? Now there's going to be price sensitivity so that they, you know, if you go from a ticket costing $50 to $500, you might lose some of them over time, but they're going to tolerate that upsell, that increased cost much better than because they've bought into the experience, they've bought into the company, they're going to budget for that and tolerate it much better than the consumer that is shopping on price. And so it allows you then to raise prices. And if you have this sort of deep brand loyalty, it allows you to adjust prices, I would say, more efficiently and more quickly than a business that doesn't have that sort of relationship with their fans, with their consumers there. And so again, they aren't shopping based on price as much as they're shopping based on other values for what you're trying to do there.
Right. Which goes into the next one, which is they're going to be, for those reasons, you know, typically going to be higher profitable. Not only are they willing to spend a little more on the product or the service, but they're also going to keep coming back. And so, you know, that's where your profit margins may come in, is because you're getting those repeat customers who are willing to spend a little more because of the customer service that you and your employees are providing, which moves into the marketing through word of mouth. So when they're happy with all that, even though they're willing to pay a little bit more and they're going to be more profitable for you, but they're also going to be telling their friends, their coworkers, their family members that we've talked about. You know, that word of mouth marketing is invaluable. It's free. You don't have to really do anything. Matter of fact, you're making money on it because, you know, there's probably more customers coming in because your original satisfied customers are telling the other folks, hey, it's a great place. I would not recommend anywhere else. You know, go there if you need X, Y, or Z.
And Mike, we see this, you know, go back to our Starbucks example, right? The marketing for Starbucks happens. Somebody want to meet with me. I'll be like, hey, let's meet at Starbucks, or let's meet at whatever coffee shop, right? And that is a free way for that business to get a relationship with another consumer without having to advertise to them or anything like that. And so again, like that's an example of what we're talking about with this here.
So one thing that we really need to keep in mind is being intentional about it. Keep it at the top of mind when you're thinking about customer experience. Customer service, customer care, those are so important to growing your business. Like I said, you know, I worked for a $10 million company that went to a $100 million company in 5 years because our first priority became customer service and customer value and making sure that customer had everything that they needed moving forward. Or if there was a problem, there's going to be problems from time to time. You know, we're not going to sugarcoat it, you know, like that. But that's part of the customer experience. That customer service is when there is a problem to help fix the problem. And if you can't fix the problem, you know, find a way to, you know, get them to someone who can. Don't just let it go. Well, I can't help it. You know, I'm sorry. You know, that's really not what we're talking about here. We're talking about trying to make those problems, you know, trying to help solve those problems the best you can. Sometimes it's not always possible, obviously, but if you can, you know, make sure that happens. What is your customer value, or what is your value to the customer? What are you providing them? What are they providing you? And then how do they understand what you're giving them? So there's knowledge, and then there's a way to communicate that knowledge. So do they understand what your product, your service is? Do they understand what you are actually providing them? What is the value that you can give them? What is value that you're getting back from them? That's another thing to always keep in mind is what value you are providing that customer. And then hiring intentionally. So hiring is always difficult, as we all know. But there is, depending on what your product or service is, hiring can be super important as far as, is the person outgoing? Do they have good understanding of or do they have the ability to have good understanding of the product or service? Can they talk to customers or consumers, help them through the issues, or explain to them what it is they're purchasing and how to move forward with it, and explain that, hey, always come back, and if you have any issues, come and talk to us. If you have great experience, come and talk to us, and we'd love to hear that as well. So hiring the right person is also really important when it comes to customer service. Now, not all of your employees are probably going to be front-facing. We understand that. But those front-facing employees are going to be talking to customers and consumers. It is important to keep that in mind that, okay, we're looking for a certain personality here. Are they outgoing a little bit? Not saying they have to be, whatever, but at least have some sort of outgoing personality and have the ability to understand the product service and to be able to explain that to consumers. Rod, do you have anything more on that one?
I'll just say quickly, making sure that even for the folks that aren't front facing, that they understand what the role of the customer relationship is in the business, and they understand how they support that customer relationship. And so that's such an integral part, and it can be everything from a person that never interacts with consumers to the person on the that's greeting them at the door. They all have to work together as a team. And if your accountant, the people that do bookkeeping for you, understand what their role is in the bottom line and what their role is in keeping consumers happy, then that ultimately then helps your business from this customer experience perspective there. So making sure that everybody's online with that, and then rewarding it is the other part I would add for when you see great examples of that. We have a friend who just retired as a VP at American Airlines, and as a part of his job, if he saw good customer service happening, he was able to give that employee a gift card, and I think it was like $100 gift card or something like that, to reward them for that activity. It wasn't a huge amount of money, but it was pointing out that, hey, what you're doing is great, and we recognize it for this company, and we want to reward you because you're going above and beyond.
So one thing to do is to empower employees to drive the highest possible customer satisfaction. Kind of like what Rob was saying, we've seen instances where, there's gift cards. We had a client down in Southwest Missouri, or Southeast Missouri rather, where the owners had a house at Table Rock Lake, and they would let an employee and his or her family go down there for a weekend and give them a $100 gift card for that weekend. So empowering that to the highest possible customer satisfaction. Again, just kind of trying to let the employees know that customer satisfaction is what drives the company. That's why people come back. That's why they spend money, and that's why they get a salary. That's kind of blunt, but it's kind of the truth at the same time. So just making sure that they drive the experience to bring the highest possible customer satisfaction. So engage customers by telling your story. Rob, you want this one?
Yeah,
You have a
and
good
so
one on this one,
a part of this is making sure that as you are forward facing, and it takes a lot of forms, and a lot of this is, in the world of social media, it's telling that story that way, but really it's thinking about how can you provide a place for your consumers to interact with the story that you're telling here. So what is your story? Why are you passionate about this particular area? Why are you passionate about customer service, and how can you then utilize that to build the brand that you are building there? And that can take a whole lot of different forms, right? I go back to my example that I was using of my auto mechanic. My story is that I want to, from his perspective, his story is that he wants to do a good job fixing cars. He wants to take care of the customer. He wants you to trust him. And so telling that story and then providing a way for that consumer to interact with your story and say, yes, this automotive company is an outstanding place and you should come here. Or if you have a social media strategy, make sure you're telling those stories and letting customers share their pictures interacting with you. We live in a world of selfies, right? We live in a world of TikTok videos and things like that. And I don't know how many times, I've seen, whether it's Starbucks or Southwest Airlines or other companies that are really kind of in this space that do a great job in this space, sharing pictures from consumers that they are sharing out there because they are identifying with that particular story there. And so, really kind of talking about who you are, what you do, and then provide a way for your customer to say, yep, this this is a great company and this is what they do here. And then, Mike, I don't know if you want me to pick up the give part, but it's really kind of focusing on not just, even more than just allowing them to engage in that story, providing opportunities at times to allow that super fan particularly to insert themselves into your story. And, and a great example of this is the whole Comic-Con phenomenon that has grown over the years, and allowing people to engage in cosplay or costume play and dress up and do all that sort of stuff, and engaging with those super fans that way, that the story in many cases about Comic-Con is about the fans and their love of the product that you have created, and it really becomes less about that product and more about the fans and and their interactions with people that are as a part of that. Oops.
Keep going, Rob. You're doing great.
Okay. And then the final three things I would say as a part of this is making sure that you understand how experience impacts your bottom line, and then using that information to share that information with your employees. A great example of this I've seen is, if you've heard of Askinosie Chocolates out of Springfield, their CEO has first of all, a great story that he tells about how he became interested in chocolates and became selling chocolates, and it's direct trade chocolates. He gets a premium for his bars. He produces great chocolate, but he also has a great story to tell as a part of that. But then he also talks about that he believes very much in open books, and that he tries to work with all their employees. And they're a small business. I think they have fewer than 20 employees. But make sure that each employee understands how their contribution is helping the bottom line of this company and helping it grow, and why what they do matters, and why that experience matters for the consumers. And so whether it's somebody who's cleaning up at night, or whether it's the director of marketing, understanding that this is what we're doing and this is how it impacts our bottom line is a key part of that here. As you're thinking about technology, then using technology as a way to enhance the experience is a key part. It doesn't mean you want to replace that experience, but you want it to be an enhancing tool. So thinking through the technology that you adopt is important. And don't just adopt it because you can adopt it, but think about it from this consumer-centric experience. What does it mean for the consumer, and how is it going to help me capture more of their money? But how's it going to help us have a better relationship over time here? And then finally, the key thing is continuing to focus on creating and maintaining this customer-first culture. And if you focus on what does the customer need, what do they want, and how do we enhance that experience, then and improve that experience, then you can keep growing this consumer-centric entity there. And so we see how technology, I'll go back to Starbucks as an example, the development of mobile apps and mobile ordering has changed the consumer experience. And as a consumer, many people just mobile order. That way it's ready when they get there. They don't have to wait. They can wait in line if they want to. They can still go into the barista also there. And so they are creating multiple ways to experience it, but it's about what is the easiest thing for that consumer to do so that they will ultimately spend their money at Starbucks and they will choose to go there as opposed to going to the convenience store to get a soda, or as opposed to going to a competitor's coffee shop, because we want to capture those dollars as a part of it. And so to drive us back to the beginning of the conversation is we all live in a world of Amazons, right? We live in a world where there's massive competition and massive convenience from a consumer perspective. And so what do we have to do in order to build our business as a part of that? Well, one of the things that we're seeing more and more is really a focus on how do we create a broader customer experience as a business. And that's, again, big businesses, that's small businesses. How do we create that experience and build brand loyalty in an area of ubiquitous choice? How do we build brand loyalty so that we can capture more of that money and we can keep our consumers with us as we grow and as we change and as we evolve our experience? And as for small businesses particularly, this customer experience is a key part of the relationship that you have, because you are able to provide that a level of service that Amazon can never capture with a consumer at a local level in a very local place there. So with that, well, I'm open for questions here. I'll stop sharing. We're open for questions.
I have a question, unless someone else does. Can you all hear me okay?
Yep.
Hi, hey everybody. So this is Susie. I work up at the university, but I'm also on the board of a couple of organizations, one of whom is represented here. I think Liz is still here. There she is, Elizabeth Hargrave, or Liz, works for the Johnson County Board of Services, which serves folks with developmental disabilities in our county. And so, and there are other organizations on as well, in addition to our businesses, who may be the only provider of a particular service. So there are some folks on the call and in the room today that have some really clear competition, but what about the case of someone maybe like the Chamber or like the Board of Services or like the downtown organization, Warrensburg Main Street, where there really is not a competitive field? You're sort of the only provider of this particular service or opportunity. How can we think about what you told us today in that point of view, that you know, are the only ones providing the service? How do we make sure, as the Chamber and as the Board of Services and Main Street, that even though our customers don't have many other choices specifically to that service, that they're still really choosing us to come to?
That's a great question. I mean, I would say even in an environment that is, I would say it's less competitive, but customers still have a choice, right? And I don't know in Warrensburg how many businesses licenses you have versus the number of Chamber members. I know I've been having conversations here with the Chamber in Columbia about some things, and they have that number, right? They know that there are X number of business licenses that the City of Columbia has issued. So there's a universe of X number of people. They know that they have Y number of members, and they know that that is not a one-to-one match. And so in that scenario, part of what your competition is really a little bit different competition, I would say, but it's the competition between people choosing to engage with your organization or not choosing to engage, and that, you know, that engagement I presume costs money. And so thinking about it from a customer service perspective or customer experience perspective, then is from an organizational perspective, how do we reach deeper into the organization, and how do we better meet the needs of people that are going to be there? Now, we also have to recognize what the space looks like, right? If you get 100% one-to-one engagement there, you are going to probably be setting records, right? But you know, so setting some clear marks about where do you want to grow there, but then thinking through, like, what can we provide, what can we do, how can we create a more holistic experience that that will allow us to better reach the audiences that we are targeting is what I would focus on as a thought of it. Mike, I don't know if you have things to add there.
So the way I would kind of look at it is it's a competition against yourself. You know, it's not necessarily a competition against a so-called competitor within the community, but it is a competition against yourself. Okay, we know, like Rob said, we know that maybe there's 300 businesses in our community, but we've only got 150 of them that are part of the chamber. How can we make that better? How can we get closer to that 300 mark? So that's where that customer service side comes in. And it could be any service. You know, you may have a local service that's the only one in your community, but 45 miles away, 100 miles away, there is another service that's exactly the same, and people are willing to go that far because they, you know, their customer experience is a lot better there, or it may be a little bit cheaper, whatever it may be. So I being an ex-athlete myself, I always looked at anything that I did was as a competition against myself, even though I was playing in another team or another person or whatever it may be. That's kind of the same mentality. It's we may be the only game in town, but we still have to be the best game.
That's great.
Yeah, one other thing I'll just quickly add as a part of it is just because you don't have a competitor now doesn't mean you couldn't have a competitor in the future. And you know, part of it is you're thinking about how do we ensure also that we are providing the services that are needed, so that from a chamber perspective, for example, that somebody, I mean, there's nothing, as far as I know, there's nothing that says that you know, somebody couldn't start another business association in the community. They might not be able to call it the chamber because of things like that. But how, you know, so like, how do we make sure that we are meeting the needs of that broader group? And so there's that other type of competition too that you want to think about. And from a holistic perspective, how do we bring people in and do the work that we need to do?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Not for you, for them. Sorry, we're in an open office area here. So I have a small business and we don't have a lot of like exact competition, but a big focus of but people could mail in. So our competition is more global. And so we focus really heavily on service and basically all the things you're talking about. And so the question that is in my mind right now is, how do I track how well I'm doing in those results, in how successful am I being? I mean, I get a lot of good feedback, but at this point we have, you know, we've felt like 1,000 customers. So that's huge for us because we're very small. A lot of them tell me, oh, it's great and everything you're doing is great and we love what you're doing, but I don't hear from probably 95% of them. So how do I know if I'm really doing this well?
Yeah. Micah, I'll defer to you to start that and answer at least.
Well, my first thought was return customers and feedback, but you're saying you're not getting a lot.
No, we
as
do.
much feedback as you would like.
We do get a lot of all of our customers. We have a super high return rate, but what we do is really a service that at some point we have a business called Photo Gym. And so we digitize photos and videos for people and help them with things like photo books and slideshows. And so there's a limited life cycle, I guess.
Right.
And we work on that, you know, and trying to find different ways because people have digital photos too, and they don't always think of, you know, things that they can do with those. So we work on that level of education, I guess. But I guess it was the verbal feedback that I don't always get. I've never had people tell me they had a bad experience, but is it really an awesome experience? How do I know?
Yeah, well, one thing that kind of comes to mind too is it's obviously the return clients. You know, if you're having a high, like you said, it is a low life cycle because people have so many pictures
Right.
that they can have digitized. But new clients coming in, how did you hear about us, kind of thing? Did you hear from a existing customer, or things like that? Possibly, say, have about 1,000 employees or
No,
1,000 clients. I mean,
customers.
1,000
Yeah.
clients. Yeah,
I have
sorry.
2 employees.
Okay, 1,000 clients, 1,000 customers. I meant, you know, if you have contact information, maybe sending out a survey, something like that, to see if you can get any feedback. I don't know. I mean, that's all you really can do, unless, you know, they're actually calling you up saying, "Hey, you did a great job." And that's a tough one. It's a really tough question.
Is there
Rob, do you have
any,
anything on top?
sorry, Mike, is there any standard for metrics for that kind of thing that could be tracked? I mean, obviously, if I did a survey, I could get some of those things.
If you're looking at sending out a survey to 1,000 customers, you might get 10% back at most, which would be 100. So then, you know, if you're looking at, we try here at the SBDC, we do send out satisfaction surveys, and we look for 96% of satisfaction. But again, if you send out 1,000, you're probably only going to get maybe 100 back. So just kind of the way it works.
Right.
I don't know if that's good advice or not. It's probably not good advice.
I don't know.
I mean, there's other metrics you could track though, and you, Mike, you hit on that, right? You could start to track referrals as a metric and see, and you could try to do things that would incentivize referrals even. So, you know, offer something to consumers that if they refer you back to 3 other customers, then how to, you know, offer a small service or something like that, right? And see what that does there, and look at that referral rate as a part of it. You could, you know, I mean, it sounds like from what you're talking about, Kathy, that there's a limited market overall. So, you know, people have X number of, they have some quantity of photos that they might try to digitize, but how could they, but, you know, whether you, I don't know if you hit 100%, do you get return customers and things like that? So tracking that would be a part of it there. You know, trying to incentivize different behaviors might be good. And I'm getting an internet connection instability message here, so hopefully you can hear me.
I can. You're doing fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Those are good ideas. Yeah, I will try that. Thank you.
Yeah, Rob, I really like that, the incentivizing the referrals. That's a great idea.
And I believe Trey shared something in the chat box there with reference to a book. I don't know, Trey, if you wanted to share with everyone. Is it Raving Fans by
Ken Blanchard.
Ken Blanchard? Yeah, okay, you're getting it. Thank you. And Brian's saying it's a great book too.
So we've just got.
There was another book I ran
left.
across preparing for this.
Go ahead.
Well, I was saying there was another book I ran across, and I forget the title, but you can look it up: Customer Experience in Sports and How Sports Teams Cultivate That Customer Experience. And that's another good example that can provide some, you know, provide an understanding of how an industry that does a really good job of doing this has done that work over time. So.
And we have another presentation that parallels sports as well, that how they do things.
Another book worth every penny that Kathy mentioned here too.
I actually have a question. I'm a senior here at UCM, and I am filling in for Derek Gill. I work at the internship office at the Harmon College of Business at UCM. My question is there a difference between the younger and older generation when trying to create these super fans, and how is the best way to go about reaching out to different age groups for it?
That's a great question, and I can so that PricewaterhouseCoopers survey that I had there, they actually have some data looking at different generations, and I don't have it right in front of me, so I can't tell you exactly what it was, but there are some differences. They aren't necessarily, the differences are in the percents though, so like, something might be 55% for Gen Z versus 65% for millennials, important sort of stuff. The basic principles, they said, were not all that different. And I'll put my email here. I can send it to you if you send me an email.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
To share some of that. But I think that, in terms of how people engage, and there's a whole lot of different conversations about what that looks like. And with different generations, that engagement is a different pathway. And so thinking about who that consumer is and where they are spending their time is going to be important, and understanding where they're spending their time. And so, we know that younger people have historically spent or been more prone to social media, they've been more engaged in social media. But even then, thinking about the platforms that you use, looking at TikTok and Instagram Reels and things like that versus Facebook, and those sort of different audiences do affect that. I see a lot of stories though about businesses that are sometimes going back to more traditional behaviors, right? And that, yeah, we have our social media channels, but how do we get out of that world, and how do we re-engage in a way that is about that face-to-face interaction and getting people, and maybe we use that to enhance that face-to-face interaction as a part of it there. So we use the TikTok video that we create in order to drive people to an event that is happening on campus, where we can inform them about what's going on in the internship program, and we can actually help try to get their information to reach out to them in different ways there. So that's sort of what I see. There's a lot of generational research out there about experiences and what different age groups want. Part of the challenge with that is, as people get older, everything changes a little bit too, right? So what you want at 22 years old isn't necessarily what you want at 42 or 62, and thinking through how those experiences that they've had influence that is a key part, and a lot of folks focus on that.
Thank you.
That really was a great question, Ashley. It was like the perfect done. Thank you very much. Again, I'm Susie Latari on the board here and part of the Member Relations Committee. We so appreciate you both, Mike and Rob. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today, and for allowing us to record this so that members who couldn't be here today can see it. And thank you, Stephen, for helping make this happen. We appreciate that, as always. Thank all of you for being here. Thank you for being chamber members. I think you got the emails of both Mike and Rob in the chat, so be sure to get that down if you would like to ask after this event. We encourage you to be on the lookout for the rest of our Making It Big in a Small Town series, You'll be getting those notifications, of course, by email and then a chamber flash. We wish you all a wonderful rest of your day and a very successful rest of your month as we are all heading into the holidays. Thank you so much for being here, and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank you.